Thanks, Adele. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're so thrilled today to have renowned safeguarding expert Yvonne Sinclair with us. She's going to discuss this vital part of early years childcare. Today, she's going to be discussing the latest updates on the safing guidance and exploring the KCSIE document in detail. She's going to give us some practical tips to implement effective safeguarding policies. And she's going to be looking at strategies for creating a safe and supportive environment for children in our settings. So for those of you that don't know Yvonne, she's an award-winning independent safeguarding consultant, trainer and presenter who specialises in education and early years. She's the founder of Safeguarding Support Limited and also developed the role of a National Safeguarding Officer for a national children's charity. She is AET qualified, she's trained in child protection by the NSPCC, and she's accredited to deliver the Safer Recruitment training by the Safer Recruitment Consortium. Her aim is to simplify the complex topic of safeguarding for absolutely everybody. So we're really looking forward to this. Over to you, Yvonne.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Adele. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you all on this lovely sunny morning. Well, it is here in Yorkshire anyway, very nice and sunny. Okay, so as that introduction just said, that I'm here to talk to you about keeping children safe in education. Now, I'm sure that you are all aware there has been many updates in keeping children safe in education. I hope that you can see the screen in front of you now. So yeah, my name's Yvonne Sinclair. I've just been introduced there. I and my team work with all educational outlets and also early years providers. And as Gail's just said there, we want to simplify safeguarding. So this morning, hopefully, I'll try and do that with some of the updated guidances. Now, any of you safeguarding practitioners out there will understand that safeguarding isn't static, and therefore it continually changes, whether that be statutory or best practice guidance. So today we've got about 30-40 minutes to focus on some of the main changes that we've had over. We're going to look at 2024. And at the end of today, I'll be able to give you some actions as well in a handout that's going to follow this session. So let's get going. Okay, sorry. The recent updates. So what we've got is working together to safeguard children. That came out in December 23 and again updated slightly in February 24. And also, if I jump across a little bit there, we've also got the information sharing. That is best practice guidance and not statutory. Now, hopefully, many of you on today's webinar will have seen our updates that we put into Parenta magazine about our articles around the changes that affected your settings. So let me just summarise in general. Working together to safeguard children is a statutory document, and it is for everybody. It relates to all educational providers in its entirety, and that includes all childcare settings. So if you are a leader in a childcare setting, school, or a childminder, you need to be aware of the changes in that guidance. Main changes are around levels of responsibilities and risk of harm. There's a couple of definition updates in that as well. Your information sharing guidance, which was updated in May 2024, well, as you know, any safeguarding practitioner knows the importance of information sharing, and the serious case reviews of the death or serious injury of a child often shows failures in sharing information too slowly or not at all. So it's really important that everybody frontline that is working with children understands the information sharing guidance. And in there, you will already, I'm assuming, be working to the 7 golden rules of information sharing. Well, in there, they've been updated slightly. So that means you need to make sure that all your practitioners are aware of that, and you may be reflecting some of those changes in your policies and procedures within your setting to make sure that you have a read of that and apply them to your settings. But today, well, in our half an hour, we're going to be talking about the EYFS, and we're going to be talking about KCSIE, as you say down south, but up in the north we call it KCSIE. So if I say KCSIE or KCSIE, I'm talking about keeping children safe in education. But let's just start with that early years foundation document. Well, let's start right at the beginning. We had another consultation. It was updated, the statutory document was updated in January 24, but immediately the government went back out for a consultation. And that consultation was around the proposed changes to safeguarding and to make sure that we've got those requirements in place, to make sure that we've got more comprehensive safeguarding and robust safeguarding procedures in place. That was closed by the last government in June 2024. We haven't heard anything from the new government as yet, so it's still out there. And so it's still waiting. As soon as anything comes through on those changes, of course, we will let you know. So let's just go back to that EYFS. What happened in January 24 is the government split the guidance, and now we have two guidances. We have one guidance, statutory, for group and school-based providers, and we have one guidance, statutory, for childminders. And I'm briefly just going to look at the summary of changes for safeguarding. Now, just to make it clear, when I say statutory, it means it's coming from a statute, it's coming from an act, which means we must adhere to these guidances. So there's not, oh, well, I'll do it if I want to do it. It's we must comply to these guidances. So what's changed in this latest guidance? Well, policies and procedures, unfortunately, are always being updated. So your safeguarding policies and procedures were updated. This is for you group and school-based providers out there. And what it says is your policies and procedures must now include all electrical devices, imaging, or devices that are capable of sharing images, not just mobile phones. So what we're talking about there is making sure that we are implementing those best practices around smartwatches, for example. So again, bit of training may be required for your staff, but also it needs to be reflected in your policies, because we're going to be looking at boundaries a little bit later this morning. Okay, the other thing that's changed is that level 2, level 3 staff members that were qualified after June 2016, they must now, as we know, hold a valid PFA certificate, otherwise can't be included in your ratios. Your level 3 practitioners no longer are required to hold a level 2 maths qualification that counts, so that they can count towards your staff ratios as well. That's a slight change that's come through there. And students and apprenticeships can be counted in the ratio at the level below their level of study if the manager is satisfied that they are competent to do so. So again, looking at ratios there to keep children safe within your setting. Qualifications. Now, qualifications must be verified, but we don't have to see the actual physical copy anymore. So there's all sorts of online verifications that you may do as well if you haven't got the original copy. And also that PFA certificate, it has to meet all the criteria as outlined in Annex A of the new EYFS. So those are the summary of changes around safeguarding only in the group and school-based providers. For you childminders that are on here today, you've got a separate document, so make sure that you're looking at the right document. And again, your separate document goes along the guidance of your safeguarding policies and procedures. And again, the use of those smartwatches need to be included around there. You're no longer required to complete training on EYFS prior to your registration. However, you're going to have to be required to evidence that you've got the knowledge of what is required to meet that registration. Childminding assistants can now fulfil the role of a key person if judged competent by the childminder, and you will have seen in the EYFS there's a whole area about the suitability of people working in the setting. Well, it's the responsibility of the childminder agency or Ofsted to carry out those suitability checks. So that's coming back to that safer recruitment to make sure that everybody working in with children are safe to do so. A little change around confidential areas. Previously we were talking about there need to be a confidential area available. It's now changed to it must be available upon request. So it doesn't need to be available at all times. Requirement to display your certificates have changed slightly. Now the requirement is we can now have them as a digital version to be able to provide to our parents. So again, slight changes in our EYFS guidance there. I'm sure if you needed, you could look back at the Parenta articles that we did earlier in the year and be able to pick up some more information around that. So let's get on to the main event today, that keeping children safe in education. The guidance that was updated on the 2nd of September. We had the draft version back in May, and we've got the final version on the 2nd of September. Just a caveat here, it has been updated since the 2nd of September. So if you had a hard copy downloaded on the 2nd, there are some slight changes that came out later that week. So it might be worth just you writing down those changes on your hard copy. So what is keeping children safe all about? Well, it's there from the government to make sure that we have clear understanding that safeguarding is everybody's responsibility, that we understand the risks and challenges to children's safety, and it's making it quite clear now, both online and offline, even at early years settings. We need to understand the signs and indicators of child abuse, exploitation, and neglect. And we're going to come back to exploitation in a minute. And we need to make sure that we are confident in handling a disclosure, because a disclosure is something completely different to a concern that we have about a child's welfare. A disclosure means that a child has actually told us something. And if we do not recognise that as a disclosure, or if we don't act appropriately on that disclosure, that child may never tell anybody again. So it's really important that we, as leaders, but also as staff within our settings, understand the differences and what their responsibilities are around that. So anybody working directly with children, and that would be most people in a setting, most, again, it's not sure that it's must, know what to do if they suspect child abuse, that exploitation and that neglect. They need to understand the referral process and who to contact within their role. And that means internally in your settings, but also externally should they need to do that. And they also need to know what to do if they have any concerns with anything in the setting, whether that's concerns about a child's safety, whether it's a concern about another adult working in your setting, or it is about your safeguarding settings within your practice. So we need to train our staff, and our policies need to reflect that accordingly. So if we've got leaders on here, your safeguarding responsibility is to make sure and just reflect, are your staff trained effectively? Are they knowledgeable? Are they confident? Do they understand how to challenge their own barriers? Are they actively listening? And are they taking in some of those stereotypes, whether that's consciously or subconsciously? Are they considering the additional barriers that any of our children with special educational needs need to overcome to be able to either tell us that they're concerned about themselves or even disclose to us? Do our staff know how to maintain confidentiality and the importance of the information sharing in line with that May 24 guidance that's come through? Are we making sure our staff are taking concerns seriously reassuring the children that they're supported, that they're safe in our setting as well. And are we building strong relationships as trusted adults with the children in our care so that we can not only build effective relationships with the children, but also with the parents as well? So lots going on there for you to reflect about your training, your policies within your setting, should I say. So what's changed in keeping children safe in education? Well, the 24 guidance, what I've put on there is your two statutory documents. At the top, you've got your keeping children safe, and at the bottom, you've got working together. And the reason why I'm putting that up there is because the safeguarding definition in both those documents are slightly different. So we would recommend that you're working towards the keeping children safe definition, which is the one that is on your screen at the moment. And slight changes which you will need to update your policies, put it in your training, etc. So we're now talking about providing help and support that meets the needs of the children as soon as a problem emerges. We'll come back to early help in a minute. We need to be protecting children from maltreatment, whether that is inside the house or outside the house, including online. And those safeguarding practitioners amongst us will know that that's called intrafamilial harm and extrafamilial harm. We need to prevent the impairment of children's mental health and physical health or development. And that came in a little while ago, that has not changed. We need to ensure that children are growing up in circumstances consistent with the provision of safe and effective care, and we need to take action to enable all children to have the best outcomes. Doing nothing is not an option. We need to understand that, and we need to empower our staff to understand that as well. So basically what we're talking about in keeping children safe is prevention, not cure. We need to understand the challenges and risks that children have, whether inside the house, outside the house, or online, signs and indicators, barriers to disclosure, and making sure that we're putting the child at the heart of all our decisions, our safeguarding decisions within our setting. So I mentioned exploitation. Exploitation has now been embedded to the Keeping Children Safe in Education guidance. So all staff need to understand what it is, why it is, and who could be who the children will be at risk from. This will affect your training and it will affect your policies, because we need to have that word exploitation put in through all your guidances. So what is it? Well, it's when an individual or a group take advantage of that imbalance of power. They manipulate, deceive a child into taking part into either criminal or sexual activity. Why did they do it? Well, perpetrators do it for either financial advantage or increased status, reputation, or even protection for themselves. The victim, remember, exploitation is a balance. The victim often would receive something in exchange for that exploitation, and that could be something as simple as love. Or we now are finding that families are being involved in in child exploitation, and that's because we're hitting the cost of living crisis, and therefore our families are experiencing a lack of finances. So therefore, they could be drawn into exploitation and using their children as part of that. And that, again, is something that our staff need to be aware of and understand the signs and indicators of it. We do know that gangs are now targeting early years now. We're coming earlier, those primary schools, and of course, those children with special educational needs. And no area is exempt. Affluent areas are also being drawn into exploitation. Another change that you will be aware of is the prevent duty. And anybody on here has a statutory duty to ensure that our children are made aware of the British values, etc. Now, in keeping children safe in education, this is still under review. We haven't got the final guidance around this, but what we have got is the new definition of extremism. And that's what I'm showing you on the screen at the moment. Again, you need to make sure that your staff are aware of this, and also it's reflected in your training and policies. It's still under consultation. Yvette Cooper, our new Home Secretary, is looking into things, especially around that misogyny, ideologism, and that strategies around tackling violence against women and girls. So again, as I said, that will need updating in your setting. There are quite a lot of new updated guidances coming through. If you're not already using these guidances, they're very, very good. So I would highly recommend that you have regard to them. Now, please don't panic following today. You're writing everything down, thinking which guidance should I look at for that. Following today's session, you will get an information booklet. And if I've mentioned any guidance on today's session, you will have a hyperlink through to that latest guidance. And that includes all these that are on the screen at the moment. It will also include at the bottom there some prevent training, because if you haven't had prevent training recently, then I would highly recommend that you get it updated. There is three free prevent training guidances available from the Home Office. As I said, start embedding that into your system. I mentioned earlier that all staff need to understand referrals, whether that's a referral internally in your setting or externally. And we need to understand the early help. What I've put on the screen in front of you here is that the guidance from Keeping Children Safe in Education. And as you can see, point 6, point 13, point 14 is referring to all staff, which means it needs to be included in your training and in your policies as well. So it's saying all staff should be prepared to identify children who may benefit from early help. So therefore, we need to tell them what type of children would benefit from early help. I'm going to put your slide up in a minute. It also says that staff should be aware of their local early help processes so that they can understand their role within it. And of course, if you've got Ofsted coming in, Ofsted may well ask your teams about Section 17 and Section 47. And again, we need to make sure that our staff understand what Section 17 is and a Section 47. All that is in Keeping Children Safe in Education, the updated guidance. Because we need to empower our staff again to be able to identify any concerns as soon as they happen, be able to know what early help is available and be able to provide it, and also then prevent it from escalating. Again, a whole new section in Keeping Children Safe in Education. I mentioned we need to tell our staff who may benefit from early help. Well, all children would benefit from early help, but particularly there are 14 different areas as identified in Keeping Children Safe that would benefit from early help. So again, we need to be making sure our staff are aware of these. Now, these 14 on the screen have been there for a few years, so your staff should already be aware of those children. But the one in red is brand new. That's just come in this year, and that's about those alternative provisions, those children that are going into PRUs. The two in blue, you will have had in last year's guidance, but there's been a slight change. We're talking about children who frequently go missing from now. Education is involved in that, home and care. And on the other side, you can see has a parent or carer in custody. Previously, it was in prison. We're now talking about the support that we need to provide to children who may have a parent or family member in custody. So again, should be reflected in your training. We know Keeping Children Safe in Education says that all safeguarding practitioners should have a specific role description, and that's been in the guidance for quite a while. Most of you on here, I would think, are looking at the Annex C of Keeping Children Safe in Education, that role of the designated safeguarding lead, and applying it to your settings. It hasn't changed from last year's guidance. So if you updated it last year, you should be fine, with the exception of that bottom bullet point there. It's saying that the designated safeguarding lead or the safeguarding lead should be able to keep detailed, accurate, secure records of all concerns. And this is the important bit here. We need to be recording discussions, decisions, and the rationale around those decisions and how that concern has either been resolved and the outcome of it. All that should be written down on your child protection concerns. So therefore, it needs to be in your role description. We looked right at the beginning about online safety, and we know about managing online safety for all children. But of course, we've got managing online safety considerations for children in early years. This guidance, I'm sure that you are all working towards. It came out in 2019 and it's still live today. This is the live guidance that I'm showing you on the screen. However, what we need to be aware of, you can see on there, you've got your EYFS, EYFS, we've got our working together, and we've got our prevent duty, and we've got our keeping children safe in education. As I've just shown you, all those have been updated. So we need to make sure that our staff are being updated with the latest guidance from the basic guidance in 2019. So quite a lot around online safety and the risks involved in that. The last thing that I want to talk to you about is managing allegations and low-level concerns. Because managing allegations has been around in the keeping children safe in education for quite a number of years now, that part 4 of keeping children safe in education. But back in 2021, keeping children safe in education part 4 was divided into 2. And we have that managing allegations section, and then we have the low level concerns section. So I just want to make sure that we understand what we need to do here. If we have got a concern about an adult in our setting that meets the threshold, the harm threshold, which means they may harm or have committed a crime or an offence towards a child, or their behaviour suggests they may not be suitable for working with children, then we must refer that to the LADO, the Local Authority Designated Officer, as highlighted in part 4 of Keeping Children Safe in Education, because it's met the threshold, okay? So we need to be doing that. But back in 2021, they brought in the low-level concerns, and a low-level concern is not an insignificant concern. It is a concern that doesn't meet that harm threshold. That's all it is. So they brought into play the part 2 of part 4 of Keeping Children Safe in Education, and it says that a low-level concern is a concern, a niggle, just that gut feeling that is inconsistent with your setting's code of conduct. And that may be something like being over-friendly with a child or children. It may be engaging with children in areas that are away from the other practitioners, or it may be inappropriate or sexual language towards staff and children. If that is happening, then that is what we call a low-level concern. And you should have systems in your setting to make sure that we are identifying these, so staff need to be trained. It needs to be in your policies, and you must be recording low-level concerns as well. And the other concern that we've got is our practices. On my first slide, we talked about concerns around our safeguarding arrangements. And what we're doing here is empowering our staff to identify, they're our eyes and ears of our setting, so that they're out there empowered to identify anything that's going on that is not in the best interest of the child. So what we're talking about here is maybe say the recruitment isn't happening, or lack of record keeping, or we're seeing a child where we're offering help, but there's no improvement to that child's situation. If that is happening in our settings, then we need to be able to ask our staff to let us know that, so that we can do something about it. Now, I don't want to put out there that scaremongering. We've got to think the unthinkable. That's all. Now, a member of staff, their behaviour may be genuine and they may be doing it with good intentions, but also it may be part of the grooming process. So we need to be aware of that and just make our staff aware of it as well. But also, we need to protect our staff and protect our staff against any allegations made against them. So if they're acting inappropriately or naively, then we as leaders need to make sure that we address that to protect them as well as the children. In the Safer Working Practices guidance, which you're going to get later on today, it makes it quite clear we have to make our settings aware of any concerns around any of these, including self-referral concerns. And that means if I have worked in one of your settings, let's say I've done some nappy changing and I've done it against the settings code of conduct, I've gone into a room and closed myself in and I'm not in sight or sound of any of the other practitioners, then I should make that referral. Tell the leader that I've done that so that they're protecting me as a member of staff, but also the child. That should be included in your training and in your policies as well. So why is this all important in early years settings? Well, we know low-level concerns have been around for a while. If we were aware, if we'd empowered and trained our staff and have the right policies and procedures in place, then the situation around Vanessa George may not have been allowed to happen, because the low-level concerns that we identified there were the things that I've just talked about, the change in her behaviour, the erosion of those boundaries in line with the best practice code of conduct, the increase of sexualised language, the role, she was a leader within the setting, and also an older lady in the setting, or one of the older ladies in the setting, so therefore she had a sense of trust. She was allowed to do what she did within that setting. She was also in a position of trust, and of course, the rest of the staff didn't have the training to be able to identify those low-level concerns that may cause a problem. And that's why we need to do that now. So basically what the guidance is saying, we need to have clear, robust staff code of conduct within our setting. This should be written in line with those Safer Working Practices guidance that came out in February 2022. All our staff need to be briefed, trained and empowered to raise any concerns they may have about our settings. And we need to make sure we've got those appropriate systems in place to respond, record and pass any concern over to the safeguarding lead. What I'm going to give you in your information booklet is access to these two documents. Hopefully you're already using them, but if you're not, they will certainly help when you're looking at your systems. Parenta, that is developing a low-level concern policy that you can embed into your staff code of conduct or your safeguarding and child protection policy. And likewise for your safer recruitment, safer working practices, that's there to protect your staff, make sure that they are working safely within your setting. What does all this mean? Well, it may mean following today, you need some training. That's all staff need to be upskilled. So just remember that all staff need training, that's safeguarding child protection training, online safety awareness training. Your safeguarding team should have appropriate safeguarding lead training, which is regularly updated. Your recruitment panels, if you're employing anybody, then they should have safer recruitment in education training. And of course, if you are a setting that has got governance or management committee, then they have separate training, completely different training about strategic responsibilities for safeguarding. There's also documents, lots of documents out there. So again, who should read what? It's quite clear. Working together to safeguard children guidance, that should be read by all frontline practitioners. Keeping children safe in education guidance, the full document, all 170 pages of it, is for leaders, it's for safeguarding teams, it's for governors. Part 1 and Annex B is for anybody working directly with children, and that should include Part 5 if it is appropriate, and that's child-on-child sexual abuse. And Part 3 is about safer recruitment. So anybody that's involved in the recruitment process should also be reading Part 3. Your EYFS statutory document, now remember there's 2 of those, they should be read by all frontline practitioners. Prevent is a statutory duty. Your safeguarding leads need to be aware of it, and then need to disseminate that information down to everybody else in your setting. And just bear in mind, keeping children safe, it's still under consultation there. And the last document there is best practice document. Keeping children safe in education says everybody working directly with children should read what to do if you're worried a child is being abused. Links through to all these documents in your information guidance. I've put on there, we're coming across quite a number of settings where some of our practitioners, although they understand English, they may not read English as clearly as we would like them to be. So there are 13 different languages of Part 1 in keeping children safe in education out there for you to give them that guidance in their own language. And just a reminder, if you are carrying out your training or you're sending out your policies and you're asking everybody to read it or be involved in the training, just bear in mind those staff members that are absent because you're sick or on holiday, they need to have it, so we need to make a note of those. Any new staff coming on board in the next academic year, we need to make sure that they receive all this guidance from induction. And keeping children safe makes it quite clear. You should have mechanisms in place to evidence their understanding. It's okay then saying they've read the document. How can you assure yourself they have read it and understand what their roles are within that document? And what we've come across is that lots of settings are saying, yeah, this is great, you've got all this training, we understand that we need it, but we can't find training for early years settings that cover all those different aspects. Those aspects of safeguarding approaches, those responsibilities, specifically for early years, those identifying signs and indicators for infants, for toddlers, and including those non-verbal clues, raising awareness about all those early health and vulnerabilities, including online harm, specifically for early years, low-level concerns, and how we as a setting should respond or make a referral. That is a big thing out there because a lot of safeguarding child protection training is for older settings. It's for primary schools and upwards. So therefore, what we're working on at the moment is some training that is going to be coming available very shortly. This training is going to cover all those areas that we've just talked about. The training is going to be self-paced, so your practitioners can do it at their own time, and it's going to take about an hour to be able to do it. It's going to be interactive, it's going to be questions and scenario based, and it is going to be accredited. It will be available for our pilot trial in February 2025. So what I would like to ask you on here today, if any of you are interested in being part of that, being part of the development of that training, so it meets your needs as a setting, then please either scan the QR code that I've got on the screen here, or in your information booklet, that QR code is going to be on there as well. What that will do is take you through to a register of interest. We have a limited number of free licenses. And when I'm talking about free licenses, it means you get access to that training, you try it out, you are our trialers, you come back, we must get feedback from you, that's all we ask from you. Please be constructive, please give us feedback, tell us what is good about it, tell us what is bad about it, and for that you will get the course free of charge, or one of your staff could get the course free of charge. And then going forward, when the final self-paced workshop is available, then you will get 5% discount off any future purchases up to the end of this academic year. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Finally, I said I would give you an action plan. In your information booklet, you're going to get this. It's at the end of the booklet. It's a PDF editable booklet, so it means that you can type on that as you're going through. You can identify who's going to do what, deadlines, etc., and you can also write on there when it's been completed, so that you can, if you're expecting Ofsted, you can show them that you're working towards meeting keeping children safe in education and their EYFS. Which just leads me to come to the end. We work throughout England here. If any of you would be interested in any safeguarding training or any other of our services, please do let us know. And I just want to end on one last thing. I want to say thank you. Thank you to all you for the role you and your teams are playing in keeping children safe in education. By having you out there, we're making it certainly a safer world for all the children in. Back over to you, Gail.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. That was amazing. I could see loads of people scribbling, the people who had their cameras on. Brilliant. I think you're still showing your screen.
Yeah, it will stop. There we go. Done. Sorry.
There you go. Well done. Now we can see more faces. So we've actually got a few questions for you, if you're happy for us to answer, ask you those.
Yes.
So there's one that's just come through from Charlene. Charlene's asking, do we need a separate online safety policy, or is a section in the main safeguarding policy enough to cover online safety as well?
Yeah, you can. What kind of setting is it?
I don't know, Charlene. I don't know if you can put you can turn your mic on if you wanted to and answer that question, or you can just put it in the chat if you feel more comfortable with that. It's a private nursery. She's just answered.
Private nursery. Okay, private nursery. No, you can embed it into your safeguarding child protection policy.
Brilliant. Okay. So a couple more questions. What are the best practices for ensuring all the staff are adequately trained and kept up to date with the latest safeguarding? Obviously, I know that you obviously promote this. So what steps can a setting take to make sure that they either have a record, or how do they maintain that as well? Because it changes so often. It's almost like there's so much information and you have to continuously keep up to date with it. So how can we support settings with that?
Okay. Support settings. If any of you wanted to join our safeguarding bulletins, it comes out on a Friday every two weeks. Again, that will tell you if there is any updates in safeguarding guidance or best practice and advice. Again, I think there is a link in the information booklet if you want to do that. It's all free of charge. We're not going to bombard you. It's not selling tool. It's just to give you the information. So keep up to date with that. Make sure that you're reading Keeping Children Safe in Education and keeping up to date and disseminating that information back down to your safeguarding teams. Because as I said in my talk there, your safeguarding teams are your eyes and ears. You as safeguarding leaders or practitioner, nursery leaders or school leaders cannot be everywhere. So therefore we have to give our staff the skills and knowledge that they need. So make sure that they're up to date. Make sure that you are recording or an attendance register that who is there on the training, because that will tell you who is not there. That's really important, because those 4 or 5 people that weren't there or 2 people that weren't there, that's giving you the indication that you need to go back and make sure that they're in Keeping Children Safe or watch training or complete training.
Yeah. I mean, CPD training is so important. I put it in the chat earlier. One of the things that Parenta's just done, we've partnered with Noodle Now. So anybody who works with Parenta actually gets free access to Noodle Now courses. Because one of the things that Ofsted looks at when they come into your setting, isn't it, is what training has been, how have you developed your staff, that leadership management, which comes to our next month's webinar, but I'll come to that in the end. But it's important that that's recorded and tracked, because that's a mandatory requirement for you to, ensure your staff gets continuous training. So different people use different softwares, or people record it via paper. What would you say is the best way to record that? Just keep a log, or?
Again, it depends on the setting, how big you are. some, if you're a childminder, then it would just be maybe an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. If you're a middle-sized provider, then again, you can have an Excel spreadsheet, or there is some software out there as well to record that. But then if you're a school or a setting, you would have bigger, you would have
Yes.
systems.
More systems. Okay. Sarah's just put a question on. She's asked if you have a separate mobile phone or camera policy, which includes smartwatches, earbuds, etc., would that be more beneficial just to incorporate that into the safeguarding policy?
Again, you could incorporate it. There's two schools of thought here. Your safeguarding and child protection policy, if we get it bigger, and the bigger it becomes, the less likely our staff are going to be reading the whole document. So that's why sometimes it is prudent to have different documents because we're reading it in small sections. What some of our clients do is they focus on different sections. So they will have a safeguarding and child protection policy with the mobile devices and everything in there, and have just like staff training on certain areas. So you're doing a focus on different areas of the safeguarding policy.
Brilliant. Okay. Another quick couple of questions. How often should you review and update your safeguarding policy? I mean, I know it changes regularly in any case, but what is best practice to update and review it?
Okay, your policy should be updated, as you just said, on a regular basis, because as soon as guidance comes through, if it's relevant to your policy, it should be updated, but it should be updated at least annually. So you should be reviewing at least annually.
Yeah, I remember when Ofsted came in to review Parenta, one of the things we had to show is when dates of when last it was reviewed, when it's due to review, and who's responsible for updating that as well. So that's another good thing to add into policies for settings.
On the front page,
Yeah.
on the front page, what's really, really useful is just have a little grid on the front, and it says date of policy, September 2024, date of review, September 25, who owns it, and it'd be the practice.
Yeah, we had to do that for all our policies as well, which is really good. Are there any anticipated changes or trends in safeguarding that we should be aware of in the future? I know this is probably a much open question, but people are worried, isn't it? Because it just changed, like you said, the document was published on the 2nd of September, and later that week, already some small changes has happened. But I love that you've got a bulletin that actually people can subscribe to that actually notifies them. But yeah, it's a concern, isn't it? Are they going to miss something?
It is a concern. What's coming up, I would certainly, if you haven't updated your low-level concerns policy procedures, that needs to go in there. Early help needs to go in there. That exploitation needs to go in there, because they're all big things within keeping children safe in education. We do know that prevent will be changing as well. We don't know when, but that will be coming in. So that we know that that's going to come in very shortly.
Brilliant. Just there's a lot of people asking about the booklets and the bulletin and stuff. All that information will be in the recording and the email that we will share with you guys. And anybody who's attending today will also be able to claim their free CPD certificate for today's session. So that also helps in terms of training that you've attended. But that all that information will be on the recording for you. A couple more questions, Yvonne, if you don't mind. How can we implement these changes into our existing safeguarding practices when they change so regularly? It's like a lot of people saying they've got separate policies for so many things, and then you've got 100 policies all of a sudden you have to update. Would you recommend having it all in one and they're updated accordingly? It's probably best, isn't it?
Yeah. Or you'll forget. You'll update it in your safeguarding policy, but you'll forget to update it on your online safety policy. You're going to miss it. So yeah, I would keep it as simple as possible.
Brilliant. Okay. Last couple of ones. According to the updated guidelines, how should staff handle a situation where a child discloses a safeguarding concern? I know there's LIDO and stuff you have to refer if that's necessary. What would you say is the best practice that people would want to follow? I know each setting might be different as well. What is your experience in that?
So just to clarify then, we're concerned about an adult in our setting and they're inappropriate.
The question is, how would staff handle a situation where a child discloses a safeguarding concern?
Okay, so then you follow your disclosure procedures. So
Yeah.
remember, again, what I could do is I could send you, we have a little brief about what staff should and shouldn't do when handling a disclosure.
That'd be amazing.
It won't be in the booklet, but I can send it over to you separately.
Yeah, if you send it to us today, if you can, we can include it in the recording. That'd be fantastic. Thank you. But basically follow the disclosure policy that you would have.
It is follow the, you know, don't allow the child to talk, don't show your shock, don't say to the child, why didn't you tell me before? Because the child is gonna stop the flow and disclosure there. So it's quite a simple
guide
document. Yeah, I'll send it over to you.
Amazing, thank you. Hello.
For the level 2 and 3 having to have paediatric first aid in order to be in ratio, is that just level 2 and 3, or higher levels also have to have the first aid to be included?
They don't all need to have level 3. Sorry, they don't all need to have pediatric. You can have a certain number within your setting that has to have. So even if they can count in ratio without that, as long as there is people in that room that has got pediatric first aid, and your numbers are still, but they don't all have to have it. But as part of a level 3 EYE standard, it is a mandatory requirement. And again, because we try and help the settings and the early years sector, if you do join Parenta and you do your apprenticeship through Parenta, you get a 25% discount vouchers on any first aid training as well.
Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, so Gail, you're going to need to turn on more mics.
Yep, that's okay. Sumidi is off mic. She should be able to unmute herself now.
Hello.
I just wanted to ask, with the ones that are doing apprenticeships, you still need to do the functional skills for the maths?
So if you do an apprenticeship, it is a mandatory requirement. For example, if you're doing a level 2, it depends on exactly your entry criteria. There's a new exemption that's coming, isn't it, for an E3 entry? So you don't need to do the level 1, but if you're doing a level 3 EYE apprenticeship, then that is still a mandatory element of part of the standard. Yes. Yeah. Vivian.
Hi, morning. Thank you very much, Yvonne and crew. I've got a little query. I often do quizzes and scenarios for my schools and my nurseries, as I'm group safeguarding lead, and they're often focused quite heavily towards older. Have you got some examples, something you could share? Because I think we have processes, we have systems, but you know, what do you do on a 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon if you find this mother collects and she's alcoholically overcome? I can put standard ones in, but it'd be really useful to have a set of ready-made. I find that I have to make them up myself, and actually it'd be really useful to have that to use with our staff of all levels. So sometimes they're overcomplicated, great big case studies to look at. We all know the big names, the baby P's, etc. But if we could have some short statements that would put people on the spot and have to go, oh yeah, okay, what would I do? I think that's a really good way of proving that you have tested all your processes and systems in place. I also ask questions of the children in our settings. Obviously, I've got older ones as well, but some of your preschoolers can answer, you know, what would they do if you've got any advice on that side of things. I have a set list of questions. It's just ways of proving that our systems are effective, from my perspective, would be useful if anybody has any feedback.
Yeah, Yvonne, have you got anything like that already, or we can put it together, or we can work with you?
No, we don't at the moment. It's a really good point, actually. Really good point. And it's something that I will definitely build in to that training and make sure it's in there for you. Really good point. Because the quizzes are, you're quite right, they're quite older. And
yeah, I love that.
Sure it's in the training. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, definitely. And it's a nice idea as well, just to kind of keep your staff engaged and keep them motivated, because who doesn't like winning a little prize once you've done a quiz, you know? Okay, just a quick one, guys. This is so next month our webinar is on the 16th of October. So when you get the recording for this webinar, you'll be able to register for next month's webinar, which is all about coaching, the importance of mentoring. And we also touch on leadership and management, which is one of the key criteria that Ofsted will look at when they come to inspect. So do join us for next month, which is on the 16th. Yvonne's got her hand up. So yes, Yvonne.
Can I just make you aware, last night, the new inspecting, school inspection handbook was.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to know how it affects safeguarding only, it will be in our next newsletter, which is next Friday.
Brilliant.
Week on Friday.
Fantastic. So do join us next month on the 16th. Yes, that's one of the reasons we've chosen that topic, to make sure we can cover that as well. No worries. Okay, Dex. Yvonne, is there anything else on your side that you would like to cover?
No, I don't think so. Thank you, guys. Thank you for everybody for listening. And if we can be of any help, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much. Emma, if we don't get a chance to answer your question, we'll definitely see if we can get back to you afterwards. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We had a full house today with, I think we were 210 at the peak of our session today. So thank you so much. Have a fantastic day, and we hopefully will meet you and see you guys all next month on the 16th of October. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.